Okay, we are going now for the section 5 with Corinna Lange and Maxime Vessets. Session centering around conservation management and spatial planning. Corinna, 15 minutes and followed by 20 minutes of questions. When you want, you can go.
So welcome back. Imagine you're a scientist in an MPA. You want to implement a monitoring program, but you have no funding, no legal permit, and of course, not enough time to do this. This was the situation I encountered during my internship with Blue Alliance in Indonesia, where my goal was to design and implement monitoring programs for turtles and other megafauna. As you know, Indonesia lies in the Coral Triangle that is known for its extremely rich biodiversity. And my project location was at the very center of it at the tip of central Sulawesi in Banggai. Indonesia's MPAs are expanding fast in both number and size. A problem is that many of them remain under-monitored and under-enforced. Therefore, NGOs like Blue Alliance come in to support the government in MPA management. Why megafauna? They are keystone and flagship species, meaning they have a high impact on other species, on food webs, and on the entire ecosystem, making them good indicators for overall MPA performance. They're also deeply embedded in local culture and economy. However, they're highly vulnerable due to a combination of anthropogenic threats and life history traits, which gives them a high conservation priority. All those species groups, turtles, reef sharks, and mobula, are protected by CITES. At the same time, ecological data on individual species and locations is scarce and outdated, and that is supported by a fairly recent paper by Muri Alves, which was one of the few that was relevant to my context and project. So considering these data gaps and difficulties in monitoring, I took a methodological approach. I implemented pilot monitoring and conducted social surveys, and then evaluated how combining these methods could help design effective marine megafauna monitoring programs in data-poor MPAs. Here you see the complexity of the whole Banggai MPA network. Don't mind the colors of the zoning, it's irrelevant. I was initially based in one of the smaller areas, Area 7, for the monitoring. From there, they also manage Area 6. Then for the social survey, I moved to Area 12, which is a huge area attached to the south of Banggai Islands. And because I had to relocate due to some unexpected issues on a quite short notice, I did different things in different MPAs. Therefore, I wanted to give you a very brief overview. We can come back to that. I started the turtle nest monitoring by a rapid threat assessment in the field that allowed the definition of the precise beach to be monitored. Then we built a hatchery for the required nest relocation. We hired and trained 2 poachers as our rangers. And within 2 weeks upon my arrival, the monitoring was already in place. For other megafauna sightings, I relied more on existing efforts, such as daily ranger patrols, other monitoring dives we did, and the citizen science program I implemented with the dive guides from the resort. Then I conducted the social survey in Area 12, and my colleagues later replicated the survey in Areas 6 and 7. Overall, we conducted 77 interviews, totaling up to over 230 hours of interviews across different villages with as equaled out as evenly as possible to provide representativeness across MPAs. And we targeted mainly fishermen, using a snowball approach, meaning we relied on recommendations on who to speak to next. We used a structured questionnaire with quantifiable questions to allow data analysis, to facilitate data analysis, and kept a few open questions to allow for further information and stories. Now, before I dive right into the results, keep in mind that the focus is really on the methodologies rather than the data itself. The turtle rangers patrolled between March and July, 3 kilometers of beach in Area 7 every night, and detected over 50 nests and 2 turtles poached, one of which you can see here that was found still alive in the back of someone's house that could still be released back. We relocated 60 nests, saving over 1,000 eggs, with a survival rate of 89%. And the other megafauna species data provided a good overview in terms of baseline data on which species are present, where, given a rough indication of the abundance. However, it was a cost-effective, time-effective approach, but also an opportunistic one, leaving me with a lot of fragmented data. So I focused my analysis rather on the social survey data, which was much more promising. Let's look into that. Here's an overview of the species presence and their respective threats across areas. And it seems that reef sharks and mobulars face the highest level of threats. Going into detail, the majority is actually bycatch, but because only 30% of bycatch is released, that still means 70% are opportunistic retention. This behavior was particularly obvious in Area 12. Now back to the overview. Based on intentional threat levels, turtles are the most threatened species across all areas, so they deserve more attention. Here is the individual species and nesting behavior per area. And for example, hawksbills are more abundant in Area 12, whereas nesting is more frequent in Area 6 and 7. Similarly, the egg poaching is more frequent especially in Area 6, with the majority of eggs being used for personal consumption. On the opposite, turtle poaching is more frequent in Area 12, with the majority being sold, with a good almost 20% specifically to Christian communities. And this is just to show that the science team in Area 7 continues to work with the data, creating heat maps, visualizing the spatial distribution of species, and same for turtle nesting. Now, in evaluation of the methods, they complement each other well in their strengths and weaknesses. For example, pilot monitoring allowed for immediate intervention, but only with a strong local focus and time focus. Whereas social survey had a larger coverage, including also historic data and rare species. I want to highlight the main limitation for the pilot monitoring. That was the lack of resources. Although a budget and also the legal permit could be acquired during the project period, the main problem that remained was a lack of close guidance of the turtle rangers and citizen scientists to keep them engaged after I left Area 7. And the social survey data is naturally subjective and based on education levels. This became very obvious when looking at the population, the perceived population trends. In Area 6 and 7, respondents mainly perceive populations as stable and increasing, whereas in Area 12, throughout all respondents, the majority perceived it as decreasing or at least stable, in line with literature. And now keep in mind that in area 12, they invest more time on community work and education that could have an effect. Now I derived a few concrete implications for monitoring design that is supported by literature. So pilot monitoring and baseline data really form an empirical foundation for further monitoring. The findings allow for long-term monitoring that is really targeted at priority species, sites, seasons, and uses the right approach method. Di Franco states that so-called local ecological knowledge is a low-cost source for ecological and social data to inform monitoring design, indicating that social service should be conducted prior to monitoring implementation. My experience was that adaptation is really adaptation to the field reality is really key. And in our case, we faced a high immediate poaching threat. So we prioritized immediate action over further planning and design, and improved as we went. Exploitation is driven by cultural norms and beliefs, and I have hundreds of examples for that. But one striking one was that the large demand of turtle meat in Area 12 seemed to be largely driven by Christian communities and ceremonies, especially Christmas, where many of these villages were actually far from the MPA border. In Area 6 and 7, where the majority of the communities is Muslim, who are not allowed to eat turtles, we had different results, right? And then turtle eggs are a gray zone, I guess, in terms of Islam and rules. Then exploitation is also driven by economic incentives, such as the international shark fin trade, and that could explain the high ratio of bycatch retention. So because elasmobranchs are mainly bycatch, it makes sense to monitor them at a fisheries interface, which is first of all cheaper and also more efficient when trying to mitigate bycatch. The same goes for rare species such as dugong, sawfish, or whales, to collaborate with fishermen that allow building opportunistic sighting networks. Here, I wanted to focus a bit more on the importance of the social dimension on each service, particularly trust building and education. And really, both methods, both approaches can build trust if the approach is right. For pilot monitoring, that particularly means involving the village authority and community from the start. For social survey, that means providing enough space, time, and transparency to allow for trust building as well. And that goes hand in hand with education, which without education, to give a concrete example, turtle nest relocation would have to go on forever. So to conclude, pilot monitoring and social survey are complementary methods. By combining both, we gained an integrated understanding of species presence, threats, and associated markets that allow for effective design of monitoring programs in data poor MPAs. And where the order in which each method is applied first is even secondary, education, as I just said, is something that really needs to be incorporated for long-term conservation success. So megafauna monitoring is ongoing work. You saw that my colleagues continue to work with the data. And as of this week, I heard that the turtle monitoring will after all be consumed in 2026. So that's good news. And in Area 12, they are still facing some compliance issues, but when they get to the point of implementing monitoring programs and research, surely the baseline data will help during these first steps as well. So with that, I wanted to thank everyone who supported the project, and thank you so much for listening.
Okay, let's open the floor for questions. Let's start with Aldine, then we will go to Louisa.
Okay, thank you, Corinna, for this nice presentation. So if you have to find another term for data for MPA, what would it be?
Another word for data for MPA?
Yeah, another word.
Like I was gonna say young, but it's not about the maturity, but about how effective the management is and what has been done in the area before. So it's also hard.
What about developing? Under development.
Yeah.
And I think that they have some needs. And this term under development means that there is maybe more need than other MPA, and these need to be identified before going into all of this. But yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I guess
because often they are not sure. It's really because there is a lot of knowledge around, and some people do not take time sometimes to listen and to collect via survey also. Also, I think it's important. And you mentioned in your conclusion about that, okay, it's not from your work, but that exploitation is driven by cultural norm and economic incentive. I think that first, what is driving exploitation, it's really the survival of the population and the needs they have, the need in terms of survival, but also the available resources they have to survive. So then how you can include that in your study?
I intended to include it in the economical incentives, as in, I was almost going to write economic relevance, a necessity actually, because of course they don't still shark fins because of the market, but the market is there and it's a more efficient way to make money. We interviewed specifically shark fishermen. It seems to be a trend where fish bombing has led to a large depletion of reef fishes. So they suddenly realized they can just go a bit beyond the MPA and fish shark and make 10 times the money. So I guess it's a sense of wording, but it was intended to be included there.
Do you think that these people there may have access to other resources than what there is in the MPA to provide their survival needs? Is there other project that develop something else around? Or?
Through Blue Alliance, actually. One of them is sea cucumber farming. So they are creating businesses, including the community. And this is, I guess, the holistic approach that Blue Alliance follows to not forbid, but to provide alternative means of living and income. And another example is ecotourism, which is present in Area 7 especially.
Okay, thank you.
So as a first question, I don't know if you specified it, maybe that's it. Which action is the institution where you work doing with the nests when they find one? Because I saw that there was an extraction of the eggs, from the and from this. I don't remember the name of the NGO.
So that's what we did with the eggs.
Yes.
Yeah. So we built a hatchery, quite a provisional one, outside of the resort, where we knew that there was no threats, no poaching, but also no predators like lizards. And we relocated the eggs from the monitoring beach, which was in the neighboring village where the poaching was more a higher threat, by motorbike in buckets.
So the hatchery was on the beach. I mean,
Yeah, like literally, it just had a fence so kids wouldn't run over, and then we protected the nests individually, and we tried different things in protecting the nest after we relocated them. When they still smell, but then we noticed that the village dogs, they don't do anything. So we removed the nests, because if you have the fence, anytime they hatch, you need to closely monitor. And that's where the lack of resources came in, that it was a constant balance of doing the best we could in monitoring and in increasing the survival in the end. So even we kind of discarded the prioritization of data collection. We just counted the eggshells after and let them hatch freely, because we had some little nightmares in between where they got stuck in a fence, that the gaps were too large and the light from the resort. So there was just so many.
But basically it worked.
The survival rate showed,
Yes.
but it was a lot of trial and errors and things that we had to mitigate that were as simple as, can you turn the huge lights off at night? And then they say yes, and the next night it's on again.
This is.
And then you find the little hatchlings in the pond where the divers understand their feet.
Yes. And the other question was about the surveys, because you did a lot of surveys and the nice effort, long surveys, and I would have liked to see more detail maybe in the questions that you organized and how you wanted to reach some particular objectives, because, for example, in the graphs that you showed, maybe you can tell us something more. Graphs.
You mean on the parameters, which type of information I collected?
Yes, because the following graphs, if I'm not wrong, are the results of the surveys. So here is presence versus threats reported per species. And I would like to know which are these threats, how they classified, how did you ask them to rank them, to mention them. It's some more.
I'm going into detail. So for elasmobranchs, the main threat was bycatch versus intentional catch. I mean, the threats are anthropogenic. So they are caught, because we interviewed the fishermen. And then, so from threats, I moved into the use. So the drive those threats.
As I said, the percentage is the percentage of respondents.
Yeah.
So saying yes, status are present. The first.
Yes, this is the number of respondents. So from 77 interviews that reported sighting of, these are all turtle species, all 4 species combined, all 3 reef shark species combined, all 4 mobula species and 2 dolphin species, and then there's also
and the presence, in the first is the presence of threats, and the second is the type.
The presence of species and the presence of threats in orange.
And the second is the.
And the second is going in detail of the threats exactly.
Which are these the threats that
catch?
Only by catch.
Yeah, no, by catch. So we asked about presence, and we asked about the catch. Like, do you catch? Do you catch? Yeah, this species. And from that it was long. That's why it was really hard to confine it down. But thanks for the questions.
Last question, then I let. Did you characterize the population of the survey? Did it? In the type of person, age, sex, employee?
Yes. So there was, the majority was first of all male, there was 1 housewife, and also around 90% were fishermen or related to the fishing industry. Some were fish suppliers or distributors that rode the motorbike from the beach to the Christian villages, for example. And the age variety was huge, from a few young people to the oldest fisherman that we interviewed that actually died in the meantime. So we had quite a variety, and it proved like our focus was to have at least one interview per village, because Area 12 was so huge. It was we did covered 8 villages of 13 in Area 6 and 7, because they're much smaller. They covered all 5 villages per area, and so we tried to get the representativeness from the local distribution, and in terms of demographics, relied on the recommendations.
Okay, so we continue. Eric.
Thank you for the presentation. Very, very interesting. I have 2 very global questions. Yes, one is directly on this one. What extent? So you mainly ask fishermen. Are they allowed to intentionally catch the sharks and turtles and whatever? And so my subsequent question is: do you think these are honest questions?
Yes. So it's a good question, because catching shark is generally not illegal in Indonesia. It's regulated as per CITES Appendix 2, but in MPAs it's illegal to catch. And regarding the second question, this goes back to one of the limitations. That I guess this is also why I've highlighted that investing so much time and building the relationship is important. And for Area 12, my colleague, I did the service with the community manager, so he had already started building relationships. That's why in many cases we knew, and in fact, some of the fishermen that we interviewed, they were ex fish bombers, and they traded hawksbill carapace, and they told us in all detail that to the extent that I was surprised why they would tell me, a stranger that comes into their house and sits there for 3 hours. Yeah.
So you consider those are honest questions? Because there's answer.
I consider I have a good feeling of when they were and when they were not, because we recorded a lot of additional information after the interview, and a few times I noted that he was hesitant. It's 3 hours, you noticed.
Yeah. The second question is linked to what you say here, the education, which is an important aspect, probably in a lot of protection aspects. Now, you had an example where you said that the people you worked with on Site 7, I think, the turtle nesting, they didn't really follow up once you left, if I got it right.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think this is so the commitment aspect? So how do you think that educational commitment is really connected? And how is it cultural? Because often they want to say yes and please, but then at the end, they don't see the real sort of value of doing it. So that's a very open and broad question.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about this?
I think this question targets 2 areas. One is the Blue Alliance management, so the staff, and simply there was a lack of staff. There was only the science coordinator that I worked with. And the other aspect is the rangers, which were the previous coaches. And here, yes, we noticed that it was easy to hire them, but it was not easy to get the message across what we wanted from them, and to keep them engaged and keep them doing what we wanted, and to find a balance between trusting them that they would, because at some point we paid them per patrol and not per nest, because otherwise we still give a market value to the nest, right? And then still, how could we know whether the first nest they brought, it was 50 eggs, which for olive ridley turtles is exactly half the number of eggs. And we were so sure that they had sold the other half. And moving on, then the numbers of eggs ranged a lot. So overall, we did trust them, but like investing this time, it was necessary. So the human resource from Blue Alliance to really follow up, to do night patrols with them once in a while, which I did frequently, was important. And then the education aspect that is going beyond the turtle rangers. So we gave them jobs, yes, but we didn't change the mindset of the community. And the problem is not just them, it's their friends. So they're in continuous competition with their own friends who are poachers, and the whole village so this is a very complex situation, but to summarize it, there was a turtle NGO in this area before the mining came. And the head of the village changed, and he was suddenly completely opposed to conservation. So we kind of stepped into a minefield in this sense. And that's why this lesson, and this we did, this not so much, to involve the village authority before just going and doing something. Because that's why it was only an emergency program. Because real change and sustainable conservation comes when you change the mindsets and when you educate, because otherwise you will keep fighting the threats.
Wait, just a quick follow-up. So what, on your side, are you doing to make them trust you?
We spend time.
But to do what? Yeah.
I guess I perceive the culture in Indonesia as very top-down, and what we tried is to build a sort of alliance, which I mean is also a very European perspective, and I guess that was also my part. But for me, it worked quite well. And when, for example, they weren't finding nests, the MPA management thought that the nesting season was over, and I investigated and I told them, look, we need, to keep your jobs and to keep working and to keep doing the important work that you do. Like, I trust you, but help me find the data. And for example, they reported nest poaching, so it was clear. So a lot of communication and having their back and giving them trust, because in Indonesia, I wouldn't say that's the case. Like, there's a strong hierarchy, and you want trust from them, but you don't give them trust, and you try to do that. Thank you.
To say.
I'm wondering, looking at your presentation, do you think that it makes sense to have a lot of small MPA that are hard to monitor, how to track what's happening, or would it be better for fewer, larger MPAs where maybe you can have more manpower to enforce the MPA? And,
good question. I realized in this context that it didn't matter, the size didn't matter so much. It was more the approach, because in area 6 and 7, in comparison to area 12, they had a bunch of stuff. They had 50 rangers that patrol day and night and land and sea. In area 6 and in area 7, we had a larger science team. And in area 12, where they had the huge area, they literally had the MPA manager, the compliance officer who did the patrol by himself in the whole area, and the community manager. And their approach was completely different. And I like that a lot, that they invested a lot in, I mentioned this earlier, on community work and education, doing workshops with women, because they found that you can influence the women a lot more than the men, and they take indirect influence on their husbands and their fishing behavior. So with that one person that really focused all his energy on building these relationships and changing mindsets, they built partnerships with the local communities, and that way they didn't need so much enforcement and so many patrols. So it depends on the approach you choose, and I think you can really be very efficient and effective, successful with few resources in a large area. It's more the management approach, I'd say.
We do have time for a couple of questions from which is large.
I wanted to ask you, how did you manage the language barrier? Because I imagine that there were a few people that were translating, but did you feel lost a bit because you didn't know the language?
Very, yeah. I mean, in terms of culture, in terms of language, especially, in fact, there was one person who translated, who was the science coordinator in Area 6 and 7. But he was from Jakarta, so also he didn't speak the local languages. And in Indonesia, you literally have thousands of, not just dialects, but languages. So they differ from one MPA to another, and oftentimes, the staff didn't even speak them. So that is a challenge that remained. For me, the only thing I could do was learn Bahasa, and that went quite well. I mean, if you spend 3 hours sitting in just one house and you do that 3 times a day, then that worked a lot. Thanks.
And so our last question from the audience or from the jury, possible? 1, 2, 3. No, perfect, very good. Thank you, Corina. Actually, we are just on time. For Maxime, who's going to be the last speaker of this morning. Maxime, we are going from Indonesia to Sardinia, talking about dolphins. Interest.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Maxime Besset, and I'm going to present to you my Immersion project that I did with Maletera Onlus organization in Alghero, Sardinia. Yes, the project is about modeling bottlenose dolphins populations under anthropogenic pressures. And I'm going to present a multi-year spatial analysis between 2022 to 2024 between dolphins and humans' activities. First, a bit of context. The Mediterranean Sea is one of the most biodiverse marine ecosystems, and especially in the northwestern of the Mediterranean, where there is a hotspot for all this biodiversity, and mostly also cetaceans. Why? Because of the Alps, the mountains that we have that are bringing the nutrients to the sea. Also, the bathymetry with all those canyons that are helping the upwelling, and the mostly constant mistral wind that is pushing the sea surface water and also helping this upwelling effect. The species we are going to study is the common bottlenose dolphin, the Turciops truncatus, and this one is classified as a least concerned species by the IUCN Red List since 2021. It used to be classified as a vulnerable species, but after several studies, they saw an increase of its population. So it got reclassified. But it's still a species that is protected by European and international framework. The dolphins are still facing a lot of anthropogenic pressure, like it's fishing, like it's the tourism and shipping. Those are kind of examples of potential injuries caused, for example, this one by a boat collision that hit the dorsal fin. And in this one, I hope you can see that he has a line that is probably made by a fishing net. So where is our study? Our study is in Sardinia, Italy, and specifically in the northwestern of Sardinia. This is the map of our study area. The study area is only the blue part. We can see Alghero city in this point, and its harbor. Its harbor is very important. It's the biggest one for touristic boats in Sardinia, and it can host 2,200 boats. We can also identify here the boundaries of the marine protected area of Capo Caccia, and it's important to see the bathymetry. We can see that the line of the 100 meters deep is several kilometers away from the shoreline. That means that we have a very big plateau, continental shelf that is very profitable for the dolphins. So what are the conservation challenges? The overlapping of the pressure, to not only have the fisheries, but also to add during the peak season of the tourism, the boat pressure. For the dolphins present, the conservation, we have the MPA boundaries, that inside we have some very specific rules to follow, but outside it only relies on the European and international framework. There is a gap in the data between the human and dolphins interactions. So this is taking us to the question, where do dolphins overlap with human activities? And this is what we're gonna. Our research hypothesis, the first one, H1, is dolphin habitat suitability is primarily driven by environmental variables related to prey availability. Okay? And the second one is about spatial conflict zone. Dolphins' high suitability habitat substantially overlaps with high suitability areas for boat and fishing gears. So this is what we are going to. What are the objectives? The objectives are to build species distribution models with Maxent, maximum entropy software, which is a program to model with presence only the species. Yeah. We are going to do those models from 2022 to 2024, and we are also going to have all years data that we're going to analyze. We want to measure the extent of the suitable habitat of the dolphins and to identify what are the key predictors for this distribution of the dolphins. We also want to quantify the overlapping zones between humans and boats, dolphins and boats, but also between dolphins and fishing gears. And at the end, we want to identify priority zones for conservation and for the management. Okay, what about the data collection? This is a map where we can see all the points, all the sightings that have been identified during the surveys. Those surveys were made with a dolphin watching tour vessel managed by marine scientists, experts in dolphins. And the time that they have been actively going for surveys is from April to October in all those 3 years. Yes, this is because of the peak season of the tourism. First, because this is the higher risk when there is more tourism, because more boats and more fishery, and also because they rely on the tourism to go out to make the surveys. So we have a total for the 3 years altogether, we have a total of 435 sightings. Then we also have for the boat traffic. For the boat traffic, those are all the presence of the boats that were around our vessel at 300 meters around. So every time we were watching a boat, we were marking with the GPS the coordinates to say that in this area there was a boat. It's important to understand that this is not abundance data. Okay, it's a presence only. Maybe in these points there was only one boat, but in this point, when we took the mark, there were 20 or 15 boats. The total amount of observation is more than 7,000. And then we have for the fishing gears, closer to the boat at 50 meters, where we had 4,000 observations. And we can see that the distribution is deeper. And this is what we're going to test with its suitability. Okay, So now we have our point that we want to input in our model. We need to check which variables we are going to use for the model. Yes, and the variables pre-selected for that is the depth, the distance to port, the slope of the seabed, the seabed habitat, the kind of habitat that we have in the bottom, the chlorophyll A, the sea surface temperature, the outcome of the boat suitability previously done, the fishing gear suitability also previously done, and the aspect. The aspect is the orientation of the slot. So to make sure to make our model more accurate, we need to assess collinearity using a Pearson correlation matrix to ensure that we will have unique variables and we don't have two variables that are meaning exactly or very similarly the same. And this is why with this Pearson correlation matrix, we can identify the variables that were most likely similar or related. And we selected the ones that were higher than 0.65. Yes, those ones that we selected, we need to take a decision about which one to keep, which one is more relevant for our model. And we can see that we have this conflict in those two. The chlorophyll with the depth, we decide to keep the depth because it's more related to the dolphin ecology directly. And distance to port with the fishing gears, as we are testing the fishing gears, we are going to keep it as a variable. Once we run the model, before watching at the result, we need to check the performance of our model. How good is it predicting the distribution of our dolphins? And we can see that for all the models we have run, that the minimum is 0.75, while the maximum is 0.81. Okay, this is the area under the curve, AUC, and this means the accuracy of our model. So, for example, the minimum that is 0.75, it means that 75% of our prediction are accurate to reality on the model. Okay, so with this result and comparing with literature that say that 0.7 is an accurate result and 0.8 it's a good result, we are into the range of accurate to good performance for a model, and we can continue with. Now, let's check our first result. We run the all data together model, and we can see the main predictors for the dolphins distribution. Those main predictors that are listed here, we can see that the main one is the fishing gear suitability. Then we have the depth and the boat suitability. That means that what explains the distribution of our dolphins is mainly the fishing gears. Okay? And then, at second place, the depth. That is also very important for the distribution of the dolphins. And as we can see, I will show you later, a graph where we can see specifically which depth is more suitable for the dolphins that we have it, at the end, which is between 35 and 55 meters deep. This is related to an effect, very well done, well-known effect in literature, the dinner bell effect, where the dolphins are attracted by the fishing gears because it's very effortless food for them, even if it has a reef. So they come, they steal the fish, and it's like a fast food for them. Okay, from the model, here we can see the suitability max, okay, from an index from 0 to 1, and it's a heat map where we can see the darkest place is where we have the highest suitability for dolphins, for boats, and fishing gear. And we can see that they are kind of different, that the dolphins don't have a suitability area close to the shore, but the boats, yes, they do. The boats are very present also in the entrance of the marine protected area, while for the fishing gears, they are mostly front of the harbor and staying on the continental shelf. Having that, we had to pass this heat map into a binary map to be able later to overlap this information and understand the area of it. So we took only the 0.6 and above scales, and we create the highest suitability maps that we are going to over. The first one, dolphins and boats, we can see that it's overlapping at 60%, meaning that 60% of the dolphins habitat high suitability is also occupied by both high suitability area. Yeah, and we can see that in front of the marine protected area, there is a big conflict between those two, and a little bit also in the continental shelf, a little bit, but not close to the shore. What is the conflict with that? The conflict is the acoustic disturbance and the collision risk. Yeah. This could lead also to a change in the behavior of those animals that could avoid the boat traffic and would have to use a suboptimal area to feed or to breathe. For the second result, we have the overlapping with the fishing gears, which is 54%, and we can see that is mainly located in front of Alghero in the continental shelf, but also in the Capocacha. In this point, we can see some area overlap, and the thing is that it's inside the marine protected area where there is already a framework. What are the conflicts? Direct entrainment risk for the dolphins and the depredation, that the fish are stealing the fish from the fishing nets. That's creating a conflict with the fishermen. Another result interesting to see is that analyzing year by year the results of overlapping, we can see that in 2022 it was higher for the fishing gears than for the boats, but the year after it went up until from 2023 to 2024 it's overlapped. So there is a shift in this relation, and it's important to notice why it could be that. Because of the good working of the fishing regulations, or also it could be explained by the comeback of touristic activity after COVID, that after that more tourists came and the more presence of boats. The NPA regulatory framework, they already have identified some full protection areas and general areas. They have fishing gears restrictions inside the NPA, and the navigation is also regulated by some strict rules. Please. So what do we recommend? We recommend an expanded speed restrictions, seasonal no transit corridors, enhance the fishing gears enforcement, and also to establish periodically this kind of spatial analysis for decision taking. This is the marine protected area, and we can see all those areas. So to conclude, both hypotheses are validated. The dolphins are driven by prey availability, even if it's not the expected and is because of the fishing gear. It means that there is fish and they are driven by that. And the suitable habitat of the dolphins, it's overlapped 60%. From the boats, from the boats, and 54 for the fishing gears. It's important to take into account these temporal shifts to take decision and to understand which is the priority. Also, this Maxent framework appears to be effective to also be used for anthropogenic pressure, and not only for species distribution. And a takeaway is that spatial planning is essential for balancing the tourism, the fishing, and the dolphins conservation. I want to thank a big thank you to Maratea team, to Gabriela, to Fabio, and to Francesco, that was incredible and very passionate by showing us everything they know. The MARES program with all the support that I got during my experience. The interns, the actual ones that were with me, and the ones that were taking the data previously. and for sure the dolphins.
Thank you, Maxime. What if we start with you, Steve? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for your model. So your data on dolphins, they are based on like 3 years, 3 or 4 years of observation.
3 years.
20 years. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then for the boats, it's only on during one season they did the observation.
It's exactly the same.
Okay, the same, like the 3 years.
Doing the same surveys.
Yeah.
They were connected with that.
Yeah. Okay. Not sure. Yeah, so finally, when I see your results, and I'm surprised you didn't mention it, like, would one of the solutions be to also extend the MPA more offshore? Because it's,
For sure.
So, and is it something you think should be implemented much more, or like this, because the MPAs tend to be very coastal, and is that a good solution?
Of course, yes, it will be super important to have like all our study area, or at least the one that is with the highest suitability habitat for dolphins included inside the MPA, because also as we could see in the high suitability of the fishing gears, they are located in all this area front of Alghero, but they are, because of the restrictions, are not that much inside the MPA. So if we could include this part inside the MPA, I think it will do a great difference for the well-being of our dolphins.
Would it do a difference, or because you mentioned for them it's a nice snack? So if you remove all the fishing effort, is that going to affect in which direction is going to affect the dolphins?
The more
If they have less fishing, is it a good thing or a bad thing for the dolphins?
it would improve the biodiversity, and it will be more fish availability. Even if with more efforts, they will still more wide and conduct wide fishing activity instead of just being opportunistic and going to steal the fish from those fishing gears, from the trawlers or the fish farm. That is also important to know that there is fish farm.
A direct follow-up, if I can. So if you say that they can't fish here anymore, the fishermen will probably not go to the other side of the island because that costs fuel. So they will go a little bit south or north. So you may just get the whole population of dolphins following the gear. Like you remove this from.
It wouldn't be about removing, as we can see inside the MPA is not removed. It's just restricted to some kind of fishing and some seasons. So it is like we cannot stop economically the situation of the fishery, and all the tourism is a huge demand of fish, and that need to be taken into account. But of course, the amount of fishing nets located in this area is important. It was impressive.
As you have the floor, you can continue.
Okay, so I had the sort of the same question. I'm not 100% sure I get it, because one of your main conclusions is that spatial planning is very important. So if you are the sort of mayor of Alghero or the region, what would you do in terms of spatial planning? What would you recommend?
About the spatial planning, I would ask for the extension of the marine protected area that I recommended.
Right, and how do you reconcile this with the economic aspect of tourism and fishing?
Yeah, but if you present it in a way that it will attract more people if the things are properly done, like with taking care of all this habitat and taking off all those pressures, we could have a more healthy or a biggest a more important abundance of dolphins that could attract also tourism that would improve its economy.
Do you have an idea of how much dolphins are killed every year by collisions with a boat of those that are feeding around here versus the fishing gear?
No, no, I don't have this data. I have the data that 50% of the fishing gears are being depredated, that are being not attacked, but are being used by the dolphins. Is 50% of the days monitored. Yes, in this there is a study by Lamana that from the same organization that they have been testing that. But about the collision, I don't have this.
Okay. And I have a question about the results of your model that ranges between 70 and 75 and 80%, so which is, as you said, quite good, but can be improved. So the question is, what do you need to improve it? Or how can you improve it? Or is it worth improving it?
Well, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. First, this is something kind of new to use this program for also anthropogenic impact for human activities, because this program is mostly done for species. And it has been just recently used for that. It has been approved by the scientific community because there are some papers published about it. So it's just a start that we are trying to add it. And I think it's already a good start to be able to.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a good start. I think it's good. So everything above 50% is better than flipping a coin. So that's fine. You can always improve it. Okay, it's not 100%, but basically, yeah. You know my question. So
yeah, I understand the question, and statistically, I don't know how to improve this score.
Is it more sampling? Is it a longer timeline? Is it because often in the models you need more data to be able to optimize it? Do we have a mean to correct it? Because because there's part of it that is right in the prediction, and then 25% that is wrong. Do we have a mean of saying, hey, this is wrong because this has been wrong predicted, and tell the machine, the model, hey, take this into account and recalculate everything?
No, I didn't see that in the result of the model. I will take this into account. Thank you.
Thanks for this presentation. So I have kind of curiosity questions. So to come back on the balancing tourism and conservation, the zone you pick to study, I mean, there is a high population of dolphins, high population of human, and is there a lot of dying dolphins in the region, or is the population declining in this specific zone? Or because it seems that it's an area where it's really, really dense in terms of human and fauna, but everything seems to be okay.
It's not easy to get this information. For example, the bycatch is something that it's a bit taboo to speak with the local fishermen, and we don't have evidence about some dead dolphins appearing. I'm sure that historically they have some.
Regarding the density of population, I can tell you that if there is dead dolphin dying in summer, you will have the information on the newspaper. So I think that, do you have any clue about the threat or the impact of the human on this specific dolphin population?
On this specific population, I think the main trait is, of course, the risk of collision, but as you say, it is not evidenced.
Yeah.
But the main one would be the change in the behavior of the wild behavior of the dolphins that are now, like, as we could see, are driven by the fishing gears.
Yes, yeah, regarding of this point, so do you know the impact of the dolphins on the catch, on the fisherman catch? What are they losing really, or are they really losing something? Is it just a bite, or is it 50% of the catch that is eaten by the dolphins?
It is not 50% of the catch eaten by the dolphins, but it's 50% of the days monitored that there have been evidence that dolphins came to catch. And
yeah, but we don't know if they catch it.
They catch the fish, and they also break the nets. And this has an economic impact that also has been studied. by this organization, by La Mana.
Yeah.
And it was around between 6 and 11,000 euros per year per fisherman, the loss of
The loss of the
economic loss.
Yeah, economic loss, but because of the dolphins, they are losing so much because of the dolphins. Are you sure about that? This include all these loss are include only because of the dolphins?
You can reread the paper and
I don't know. Because I find that
get it back
really,
to you. Yeah. But
it's really crazy, but yeah.
It's sure, you can be sure.
Yeah.
but it's very impressive how they are attracted to the human activities in this area, because this study is only about boats and fishing gears. But also, as I earlier mentioned, is that here in the middle there is a fish farm that it was very frequent to see them turning around.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot say numbers because I don't have the number. And also in the end of our study area, we have some trawling activity and
Because what is really, I mean, also not, I don't want to say funny, but it's cool, or I don't know, cool, but what you show in your project is that, okay, often people show that when there is a high anthropogenic pressure, there is no fauna, I mean, you get everything. Here, the high anthropogenic pressure seems to bring a lot of big fauna.
it does the carbon.
And yeah, so it's a quite cool area to study, because also understanding how this big fauna adapts and yeah, okay. Thanks.
It does. With that,
Staying on this topic, I don't know if you found information about the population that you were studying here. Are they more always in the area? Are they moving a lot? Do you know if there are some organizations that are, for example, identifying them? Or...
This organization is the only one studying the dolphins in this area. And they have 150 dolphins photo-identified in their catalog, because they do a further photo identification. And they consider that half of them, 75, are considered as residents in the area, that are seen like very often in the area. And there are 4 subpopulations.
Okay.
Yes, and they are also related to the could be related. I cannot
Okay.
say that, but to the areas with some anthropogenic activities, like here in the deep and some around the marine protected area.
And do you know if the population size is increasing in the last decades?
It's not easy to say because
Okay.
they are not just here in our study area. Sometimes they are passing, or sometimes there are some that the study area is too small to say that those dolphins are the ones that we can manage to track all the time.
I'm sure that fishermen say that they are increasing. Now, can you go please to the variables that you use for the models? And can you tell me where did you download this data and which is the resolution of the pixel?
Okay, so first of all, from this one or from the full?
No, this one, the one that you use for the model. No,
The other one.
sorry, distance to port, distance to harbor, the classic ones. Yes, this one.
So the depth is coming from Copernicus. We have the distance to port that has been calculated on GIS. At the beginning, we were using ArcMap, and at the end, I finished with the QGIS. We have the slopes, the seabed habitats, and the aspects that was given by the organization. That is the same data coming from the previous papers published by the organization. We have been working ourselves, the interns, on the chlorophyll and the sea surface temperature, making some kernel interpolation to make it special for a grid of 250 meters, much more specific than the one that we can download in Copernicus. And those two are the results of previously modeled for the boats and the fishing gears.
The results that you presented. Or,
Yeah, but we use this data to model the boat's stability and the fishing gears, and then the results of the boats and the fishing gears, we are going to use them for the dolphins.
okay. Yes. It's sometimes it's nice to have the resolution.
Okay, yeah, okay.
As a suggestion for the presentation. For me, it's
Great.
thanks.
So before we go for lunch, ladies and gentlemen, we have a question. Yes,
Yeah, I was curious, maybe kind of like what Corinne was working on, but I was curious if you know if there's any, if you talk to fishers at all, or if you know if there's any evidence of negative interactions with fishers and dolphins, if they're hurting them because they're taking their catch, or if they're having high economic impacts on their catch, or breaking their nets, if fishers are trying to kill dolphins or catch dolphins just to stop them from catching the nets, and if that is an interaction that could be dangerous for them. Interesting.
So this is one of the problematic between the dolphins and the fishermen, that both of them are like killing each other's, like one because there is less fish and the other one because they are stealing their fish. That's
Okay.
the same. But
I'm sure the fishers don't like the dolphins coming in and taking their fish. Is there evidence? Do you know if there's any evidence of them?
there is communication somehow between this organization and the fishermen by the intermediate of the marine protected area, where they are receiving some training and some explanation about what is happening, why it's happening, and also they are working together on devices to deter the dolphins from the fishing gears. But those are it's a study that it's an ongoing study, and it's more related to the bioacoustic.
yes, follow-up question, and then Karina.
Do you know how long it takes to the dolphin to come to see a net? Meaning that when the fishermen put the net into the water, how long does the fisherman leave it? And how long does it take to the dolphins to realize that there is a lot of fast food coming?
I don't have this.
Because this can be a really, really important thing to know, because if they don't leave it 1 week in the net in the water, and that you can maybe save dolphins and catch for the fishermen.
I think it's possible to get this information because the Maretera is doing their bioacoustic studies, leaving sounds apparatus to detect when the dolphins are coming. So they should have this.
Then better better coordination after.
They have a lot of data to work with, and year by year they are mixing the information and publishing some very interesting papers.
Okay, thank you.
So Karina.
I also researched bottlenose dolphins in Spain, and it's really crazy how they use, in that case, the oyster farms as a buffet, and I can also really see the economic loss, and I think that should be taken seriously. Adding to your both questions, if all this doesn't exist, this specific information, like let's call it soft data from the fishermen, what do you think about doing a social survey as a follow-up to collect this data more specifically on the type of threat and interactions?
A social survey.
Yeah, that's what I did. What?
I think it's always interesting to take into account the opinion of the people, and it's a way to engage the stakeholders, and it has to be to account.
And you think the fishermen would be open for collaboration?
I think with the good approach and the good motivations, they will be open. Like if you go with the fishermen and you explain them that you're working on a device that is going to keep the dolphins away from the fishing nets, they will be very open.
maybe the idea is not to get the opinion of the features, but maybe the knowledge from
The knowledge, yeah.
Do you have a few more questions? We have a couple of minutes. Exactly. Do you want to add anything on your side? No? I'm good. So thank you, Maxime, and thank you to the panel. We're coming back for this afternoon session at 14:10, 2:10. On reprend à 2h10 with Sophia, Lena, and Amy. Bon appétit.